Welcome to Revenge with Naomi. Don't forget to subscribe. My name is Aveline, and the day my cousin called me deadweight in front of our entire family was the day everything changed. It happened at our annual family gathering, the one where everyone took turns bragging about their achievements. I never liked those gatherings, but I always showed up out of respect for my grandparents. That year, I arrived quietly, hoping to blend into the background. But my cousin, who loved attention more than anything, stood up during dinner and said loudly, "Some people in this family don't contribute anything. They drain us. They hold us back." Everyone turned toward me. I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept my eyes down. My cousin continued, "Honestly, the trust shouldn't waste resources on people who don't lift a finger." Dead weight. That's what she called me. I looked around, waiting for someone to defend me. No one did. My aunt avoided my gaze, my uncle cleared his throat, and even my siblings stayed silent. The room felt smaller, tighter. I wanted to leave, but something told me to stay. Something told me this moment was important, like the start of a story I didn't yet understand. I didn't know then that her public insult would trigger a series of events she could never undo. I drove home after the dinner, my chest tight with embarrassment. My cousin had always been loud and controlling, but that night she crossed a line. I replayed her words over and over, dead weight. She wanted everyone to hear it. She wanted me to feel small. But anger wasn't the emotion that followed me home, confusion was. Why was she suddenly so focused on the family trust? Why did she care whether I contributed? The trust wasn't even active yet. Our grandparents had set it aside for future use, with rules none of us fully understood. The next morning, I got a message from my grandmother asking me to come over. Her tone was gentle but firm. I drove to her house nervously, wondering if she wanted to scold me for causing drama, even though I hadn't said a word. When I arrived, she was waiting for me on the porch with a folder on her lap. She studied my face for a long moment before speaking. "Aveline," she said softly, "how long have you been letting that girl treat you like this?" Her question shocked me. I don't know." Grandmother nodded slowly. "Your cousin has been pushing for changes to the trust. She wants control. And she thinks belittling you will make you step aside." My stomach dropped. Step aside for what? Then she placed the folder in my hands. "Aveline," she said, "it's time you knew the truth." I opened the folder carefully. Inside were papers, official ones, with bold stamps and detailed signatures. My grandmother waited quietly as I scanned the first page. It was the original trust document. And next to primary beneficiary was my name. My breath caught. "I don't understand." Grandmother folded her hands. "Your cousin believes she deserves everything because she's loud, confident, and always demanding. But your grandfather and I chose differently. We chose the one who worked hard quietly. The one who never took advantage. The one who stayed kind." My heartbeat felt too fast. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because the trust doesn't activate until we decide to turn it over," she said. "And that time is near." "So, she doesn't know I'm the beneficiary?" "Not exactly," Grandmother said. "She suspects something. That's why she's attacking you now. She thinks if she embarrasses you enough, you'll back away and give her room." I shook my head. "But why me? What did I do to deserve this?" Grandmother gave me a sad smile. "Sometimes goodness is quiet. And quiet goodness scares selfish people." I stared at the papers, my cousin's words echoing in my mind. Dead weight. If only she knew how wrong she was. But that wasn't the part that frightened me. It was the final page, one that revealed an even bigger twist. On the last page, my eyes locked onto a clause written in bold. Full transfer authority shall be activated only under the guidance and approval of the designated beneficiary. My fingers tightened on the paper. This means the trust can't change unless I approve it. Grandmother nodded. That's correct. My cousin wanted control. She was desperate for it. But I was the only one who had the authority. Not her. Not the rest of the family. Just me. A new feeling stirred inside me, fear mixed with responsibility. But if she finds out, I whispered, she'll come after me harder. Grandmother placed her hand on mine. That's why I need you to be strong. Your cousin has already asked to meet with us next week. She plans to demand changes. And she thinks she has the power to force them, I said quietly. Grandmother nodded. But she doesn't. As I drove home that day, the truth pressed on me like a weight I wasn't sure I was ready to carry. All these years, I believed my cousin had the upper hand, confident, successful, admired. And I was the quiet one in the background. But quietly, without anyone knowing, I was holding something she wanted more than anything. And she had no idea I could stop her. The next few days were tense. My cousin's posts on social media grew sharper, full of hints about lazy family members dragging everyone down. She didn't mention my name, but everyone knew who she meant. I tried to ignore it, but the comments, the whispers, the messages from relatives who didn't know the full story, all of it stung. Still, I kept the trust documents close, hiding them in a locked box in my room. I read them every night, studying each line until I understood exactly what they meant. The more I learned, the more I realized how much power my grandparents had given me. And the more I understood why my cousin wanted me out of the way. By the time the family meeting came, I was ready. Or I thought I was. When I arrived at my grandparents' house, everyone was already gathered. My cousin sat at the center of the table like she owned the place, her back straight and her smile smug. Well, she said loudly when she saw me, I didn't think dead weight would show up. A few relatives snickered. But this time, I didn't look down. I walked to my seat calmly, holding the trust folder close to my side. My cousin had no idea the storm she was about to face. Or that every one of her plans was already collapsing. The meeting began with small talk, though tension filled the room like thick smoke. My grandmother sat quietly at the head of the table while my grandfather reviewed a stack of printed notes. My cousin, however, jumped right in the moment she sensed attention drifting away from her. I called this meeting, she announced loudly, because the trust needs better management. Stronger leadership. She brushed her hair back dramatically. Leadership that understands money, business, and responsibility. Her eyes flicked directly to me. I held my breath, waiting. She continued, some people in this family don't contribute. Some rely on the trust without offering anything in return. It's time we remove unnecessary beneficiaries. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded along, afraid to disagree with her. I sat still, my hands resting on the folder in my lap. My cousin leaned forward. I propose adjustments to the trust, removing inactive parties and increasing decision-making power for those who truly invest in the family. I almost laughed. She had no idea she couldn't change anything. My grandfather cleared his throat. Before we discuss changes, we need to hear from everyone. My cousin smirked. There's nothing to hear. Some people don't have anything meaningful to add. That was the moment I opened the folder. For the first time, her smile faltered. I placed the trust documents on the table. The room grew silent as pages brushed against the wood. My cousin's eyes widened, confusion replacing her confidence. What's that? She asked sharply. The truth, I said calmly. My grandparents watched closely as I slid the documents toward the center. These are the original trust papers, I continued. Signed by our grandparents. Filed with the attorney. Unchanged. My cousin frowned. Why do you have those? Because I needed to understand the things you've been trying to change. Whispers rippled across the table. My grandmother nodded softly, encouraging me to continue. I flipped to the beneficiary page, tapping my name. According to this, I'm the primary beneficiary. My cousin's face twisted. That's impossible. You must have forged it. My grandfather spoke for the first time. She didn't forge anything. That is the original document. My cousin's voice rose. But she doesn't do anything. She doesn't contribute. I met her stare calmly. You've spent years calling me weak. But you never bothered to understand how the trust actually works. Then I turned to the final clause. And only the primary beneficiary can approve changes. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. My cousin's expression collapsed into disbelief. For the first time, she realized she wasn't the one with power. I was. My cousin tried to speak, but her voice broke. No, this can't be right. Why would they choose you? Her tone was sharp, desperate. I had never seen her shaken like this. My grandmother folded her hands. We chose Aveline because she listens. She thinks before she acts. She never uses family for personal gain. My cousin looked around, hoping someone would defend her. No one did. Even the relatives who usually supported her lowered their eyes. She pointed at me with a trembling finger. She's weak. She doesn't know anything about managing money. She knows enough to remain honest, my grandfather said firmly. Which is more than we can say for you. A hush fell across the room. My cousin's breathing turned rapid. She grabbed her purse and stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm not staying for this. Before she could storm out, my grandmother's voice stopped her. We haven't discussed the audit. My cousin froze. Audit? My heartbeat quickened. I had forgotten that part. My grandmother continued, your recent behavior, your sudden interest in the trust, your attempts to pressure family members, these actions triggered a review. My cousin's face turned pale. The trust attorney found irregular requests traced back to you. Gasps filled the room. My cousin looked trapped. Because she was. My cousin sank back into her chair slowly, as if her legs had given out. Irregular requests, she whispered. My grandfather nodded. Attempts to remove beneficiaries. Attempts to shift assets. Attempts to grant yourself higher authority. My cousin's voice cracked. I didn't. The attorney recorded everything, my grandmother said. And because the trust was built with Aveline as the key decision-maker, all those attempts were automatically flagged. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. For the first time, I felt the full weight of what my grandparents had built, and what my cousin had tried to take. My cousin's composure shattered. I just wanted some control. You always treat her like she's special. She's done nothing. My grandmother shook her head. You confuse silence with weakness. And humility with failure. Tears filled my cousin's eyes, but no one rushed to comfort her. My grandfather lifted a separate folder. Because of your actions, the trust is entering a formal audit. During this process, only the primary beneficiary may operate or authorize activity. He turned toward me. Aveline, that authority belongs to you. A pin could have dropped in that room. My cousin stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Aveline, please, she whispered. You can't do this. But she had done all of this to herself. I took a slow breath, feeling everyone's eyes on me. My cousin looked terrified, truly terrified, and for a moment, a small part of me felt sorry for her. But then I remembered her laughter when she called me dead weight. The way she tried to erase me from the family. The way she thought cruelty made her powerful. I sat up straighter. I don't want to hurt anyone, I said. But the trust isn't a toy. You tried to break it. And you tried to break me along with it. My cousin wiped her eyes angrily. I was just trying to prove myself. You don't prove yourself by destroying someone else, I replied quietly. My grandparents exchanged a glance of approval. My grandfather spoke next. The audit will begin next week. During that time, Aveline will be in full control. Any issues, decisions, or adjustments will go through her. My cousin's voice shook. So, I'm powerless? No, my grandmother said gently. You are accountable. The meeting ended slowly, people rising from their seats, whispering. Some hugged me. Some apologized for staying silent. Others simply looked stunned. My cousin hurried out without looking at anyone. As I gathered my papers, one thought settled deep in my mind. She had spent years calling me dead weight. But now, for the first time, she understood the truth. I was the one holding everything together. The days after the meeting were strangely quiet. No angry texts from my cousin. No comments online. No side messages from relatives stirring drama. It felt like the whole family was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Meanwhile, I met with the trust attorney, Mr. Hulson. He was a calm, serious man with silver hair and a voice that made everything sound important. Aveline, he said, sliding a thick binder across his desk, these are all the documents your cousin attempted to modify. I opened it, and felt my stomach twist. She hadn't just tried to remove me. She also tried to redirect assets to an account under her name. She requested early access to funds meant for long-term investments. She even attempted to dissolve one of the properties without notifying the family. How did she expect to hide all this? I whispered. She didn't understand the trust structure, he replied. She thought loudness was power. She thought confidence could override design. I nodded slowly. During the audit, he continued, you will be the only person authorized to approve actions. You'll need to decide whether the trust should freeze her access entirely. My throat tightened. Freeze her out completely? The thought felt heavy, but necessary. Because she didn't just break rules. She tried to break the entire foundation my grandparents built. I left the attorney's office with a folder full of evidence, proof of everything my cousin had tried to do behind everyone's backs. The papers felt heavier than their actual weight, like I was holding my family's history and future all at once. When I got home, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. Line after line revealed the truth, she wasn't just ambitious. She was reckless. I read until my eyes burned. By midnight, I reached the page that made my stomach drop. A letter drafted by my cousin. A letter she intended to send to the bank, claiming I was unfit and should be removed from the trust for mental instability. I froze. Mental instability? I had never struggled with anything like that. This was manipulation, pure character assassination. She hadn't just wanted me out of the trust. She wanted me erased. The next morning, I took everything to my grandparents. My grandmother read the letter slowly, her hands trembling. How could she do this? She whispered. My grandfather's face was harder. Because she assumed you wouldn't fight back. I swallowed. I don't want revenge. But I can't let her keep hurting people. Grandfather nodded. Then handle this audit with courage. The trust was built to protect our family. And you are its protector now. His words stayed with me long after I left. Protector. I had never seen myself as one. But it was time to learn. The audit officially began on a Monday morning. 2 auditors arrived at my grandparents' home, setting up laptops and folders across the dining table like they were preparing for battle. My cousin was required to attend the first session, but she showed up late, hair messy, cheeks flushed, eyes full of anger. So now I'm being treated like a criminal? She snapped as she sat down. The lead auditor replied calmly, "We're here to verify trust integrity. Nothing more." Her glare shot toward me. "You're loving this, aren't you?" I shook my head. "I'm not happy about any of this." "Liar," she hissed. The auditors began reviewing her attempted changes, one by one. With each item exposed, my cousin grew more agitated. She kept interrupting, making excuses, blaming stress, blaming misunderstandings, blaming everyone except herself. When they brought up the drafted letter accusing me of instability, she turned red. "That was never sent," she muttered. "But you intended to send it," I said quietly. She didn't respond. The room grew painfully still. Finally, the auditor said, "Based on the evidence, your access to trust operations must be temporarily suspended until the review concludes." My cousin's chair scraped loudly as she stood. "This is ridiculous. You're all choosing her over me." Grandmother met her eyes with sadness. "No. You made choices, and we're responding." My cousin stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The audit wasn't over. But her control was. With my cousin suspended from decisions, the auditors worked with me directly. Every day felt like a new test of my patience and strength. They asked me to review accounts, cross-check dates, and confirm signatures. Sometimes I doubted myself, wondering if I was strong enough, smart enough, steady enough to handle all this. But then I remembered something my grandmother said years ago. "Quiet people hold the strongest walls." I held on to that. As the audit continued, new issues surfaced, small mistakes, missed payments, and messy paperwork. But the most frightening part wasn't the errors. It was the pattern. My cousin had been planning her takeover for months. Long before she called me dead weight. Long before the meeting. One evening, after 6 hours of reviewing documents, the lead auditor closed his laptop and said, "Aveline, I've overseen hundreds of audits. But I've never seen one where the main problem was a single person's selfishness." He gestured toward the folders. "Your cousin didn't care about rules or consequences. She cared about winning." I nodded slowly. He leaned back. "You, on the other hand, have been steady. Honest. Careful. That's why the trust named you primary." I looked down at my hands, feeling a weight lift from my chest. For the first time, I believed him. Maybe I really was meant to hold this role. Not because I was loud, but because I was steady enough to carry it. When the auditors reached the final phase, they called for one last meeting, with my grandparents, me, and my cousin. She arrived stiff and silent, refusing to look at anyone. Her confidence was gone. In its place was a cold bitterness that made my heart ache a little, despite everything she had done. The lead auditor began, "We have completed our review of all attempted modifications. Our findings show repeated efforts to alter the trust without proper authority, including removal attempts, asset reroutes, and false statements." My cousin crossed her arms tightly. He continued, "Because the trust structure grants full authority to the primary beneficiary, none of these attempts were legally valid." Silence filled the room. Then he turned to me. "Given your compliance, honesty, and cooperation, we are recommending full operational authority be transferred to you immediately." My breath caught. "Full authority?" Grandmother smiled softly. "Yes, Aveline. It's time." My cousin's voice broke. "You're giving her everything? After all I did for this family?" Grandfather's eyes hardened. "You didn't do it for the family. You did it for yourself." My cousin stood, tears burning down her cheeks. "This isn't fair." I didn't shout back. I didn't argue. I simply held her gaze and said quietly, "What's fair is the truth. And the truth is finally showing." She looked at me like she wanted to scream. but she had run out of power. And she knew it. After the meeting, my cousin left without saying another word. The front door closed behind her with a soft click, not angry, not loud, but defeated. For some reason, that sound stayed with me longer than any insult she had ever thrown at me. The auditors packed their things, gave my grandparents a final summary, and shook my hand before leaving. "You handled this with grace," one of them said. Not everyone would. Grace. I wasn't sure that was the right word. I felt drained, heavy, and quietly shaken. But I thanked him anyway. When everyone was gone, my grandmother guided me to the living room. She placed her hand on mine. "Aveline," she said softly, "we knew the trust needed a protector. That's why we chose you. Not because you were loud, but because you had a strong spirit." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I don't feel strong." "You don't need to feel strong," she replied. "You just need to keep doing what's right." My grandfather walked in with a sealed envelope. "This," he said, "is the final step. Inside is the document that officially transfers full control to you." My hands trembled as I accepted it. Full control. Something I never imagined having. Something my cousin always thought she deserved. And now, it rested entirely with me. I didn't open the envelope right away. Instead, I drove home slowly, letting the cool evening air calm my nerves. My cousin's face lingered in my mind, the shock, the anger, the disbelief. A part of me wondered if I should reach out to her. But then I remembered the forged letter, the lies, and the attempts to erase me. Trust wasn't something that healed overnight. At home, I placed the envelope on my desk and stared at it for a long moment. It felt like more than paper. It felt like a doorway leading to something much bigger than the quiet life I once lived. Finally, I opened it. Inside was a single document titled Transfer of Authority, Primary Beneficiary Activation. My name appeared again and again within the text. Every clause confirmed what the auditors said. I now had full authority to manage, protect, and operate the entire trust. Every asset, every account, every decision. My heart thudded loudly in my chest. I signed where they had marked, sealing my role officially. When I leaned back in my chair, I didn't feel powerful. I felt responsible. And responsibility was so much heavier than power. I whispered to myself, "Don't fail them." Because this wasn't just about money. It was about my family's legacy, and I was now the one guarding it. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of messages. Some were from relatives apologizing for staying quiet when my cousin attacked me. Others sent congratulations. A few simply said, "We're proud of you." But there was one message missing, mine from my cousin. By noon, she finally called. I hesitated before answering. Her voice was flat. "So, it's done. You won." "I didn't win," I said softly. "This wasn't a competition." "That's easy for you to say. You got everything." "No," I replied. "I got responsibility. And trust. Not some prize." She scoffed weakly. "You think that sounds better?" I sighed. "Why did you do it? Why go so far?" There was a long silence before she finally said, "Because I was tired of being second. I wanted to matter." "You already mattered," I told her. "You just didn't want to see it." Her voice cracked. "Well, now I have nothing." "That's not true," I said gently. "But you will have to face the consequences of what you tried to do." She didn't argue. She just whispered, "Goodbye, Aveline," and hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. The storm between us wasn't gone. But the worst part was over. Later that week, I met with the Trust's financial team for the first time in my new role. They welcomed me warmly, though I could sense their curiosity. I wasn't the loud type, the demanding type, or the type who pushed others aside to be seen. But they didn't need loudness. They needed leadership. The head advisor, Mrs. Dalka, smiled and slid a binder toward me. "This contains everything you now oversee. We'll support you, but the final decisions are yours." I opened it, and felt the scale of everything hit me all over again. Properties, investments, donations, scholarship funds, retirement accounts, emergency reserves. Rows of numbers, records, and plans stretched across the pages like a map of my grandparents' lives. They had worked for decades to build this. And now, their trust lay in my hands. "You don't need to rush anything," Mrs. Dalka said kindly. "Just learn the system." I nodded. "I will." She studied me for a moment. "Your grandparents said you're steady and thoughtful. That's exactly what a trust like this needs." As I left the office, a new feeling settled inside me, not fear, not pressure, but purpose. I wasn't just filling a role. I was stepping into who I was meant to become. And for once, I didn't feel undeserving. I felt ready. By the end of the month, my life looked completely different. I attended trust meetings, I reviewed future plans, I approved distributions, I spoke with advisors, lawyers, and accountants. Every decision I made built confidence, both in others and in myself. But surprisingly, the biggest change wasn't the responsibilities. It was the way my family treated me. Relatives who once ignored me now asked for my insight. They invited me to discussions. They valued my opinion, not because I controlled the trust, but because they finally saw the person behind the quietness. One Sunday afternoon, my grandmother invited me for tea. She poured a cup for me, sat across the table, and simply watched me for a moment. "You've grown," she said softly. I smiled. "I've had to." "No," she said gently, "you already had the strength. You just didn't know it." Her words warmed something deep in my chest. As I walked home that evening, the sky turning golden above me, I realized something important. My cousin called me deadweight because she believed silence meant weakness. But silence can be powerful, silence can be steady, silence can carry entire legacies. And mine did. I wasn't deadweight. I was the pillar holding everything up. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. My cousin showed up at my apartment. I nearly froze when I opened the door and saw her standing there, eyes tired, shoulders slumped, a completely different person from the one who once mocked me in front of everyone. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, but then stepped aside. We sat at my small kitchen table, the silence stretching between us. "I'm not here to fight," she said. I wanted to understand how you did it. How you kept going after everything I said." "I didn't do it to beat you," I replied softly. "I did it because the trust needed someone honest." She looked down. "I thought taking control would make people respect me. But all I did was push everyone away." I didn't respond right away. I could see the guilt in her eyes, heavy and real, not the fake regret she used to use. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." Her voice cracked at the last word. I didn't forgive her, not fully, not yet. But I nodded. It was the first honest moment we'd shared in years. And for now, that was enough. After she left, I sat alone at the table, thinking about everything we had gone through. I never wanted a fight. I never wanted a battle for attention, control, or approval. I just wanted peace, something simple that our family rarely understood. Later that week, my grandparents called a family meeting. Dozens of relatives filled their living room, talking in soft tones. When I walked in, everyone turned toward me, not with judgment like before, but with respect. My grandfather cleared his throat. We asked everyone here today to discuss the trust's future and to thank the person who protected it. I felt my cheeks warm. He continued. Aveline stepped up when no one else would. She kept our work safe. She restored honesty. And now she will guide this trust with the same care she has shown from the start. People nodded. Some even smiled proudly. Then my grandmother added, "This family lost its way for a moment. But we found our center again. And that center is Aveline." Hearing that made something swell in my chest, something soft, strong, and healing. For the first time, I realized the truth. I wasn't standing in my cousin's shadow. I had become the light this family needed. But even with all the support, the weeks that followed weren't perfect. I still worried about making mistakes. I still double-checked every document. I still woke up early to study past records, old plans, and future strategies. The trust was huge, bigger than anyone outside the family understood. And every choice mattered. One afternoon, while reorganizing old files, I found a handwritten letter tucked inside a folder labeled Founder's Notes. It was from my great-grandmother, written decades before I was even born. The first line made me freeze. The trust should be led by the one who values duty over attention. I read the letter twice, then a third time. It described the family's earliest struggles, the sacrifices made, and why the trust existed in the first place. And at the end, she wrote, "Choose the heart that stays steady in storms." My throat tightened. It felt like she was speaking directly to me across time. Holding that letter, I understood something important. Leadership wasn't about being the loudest or the most impressive. It was about being steady. It was about being honest. It was about being the one people could rely on when everything around them shook. And that was the role I had grown into. Spring arrived quickly, painting the town with soft colors and warm sunlight. I spent more time at my grandparents' house, helping them organize papers and reviewing their future plans. They seemed lighter now, freer, like the tension that once divided the family had finally loosened. One afternoon, my grandmother handed me a small wooden box. "Open it," she said. Inside was a silver bracelet engraved with a single word, steadfast. "This belonged to your great-grandmother," she told me. She wore it during the hardest years. She wanted it passed to the person who showed the same strength. I touched the cool metal, my chest tightening. "Are you sure?" She smiled gently. "It belongs with you now." I clasped it around my wrist. It felt like an anchor and a promise. Later that evening, as my grandfather walked me to my car, he said, "We never chose you to spite anyone. We chose you because we saw your heart." That night, I sat at home, tracing the bracelet with my thumb, feeling the weight of generations resting quietly against my skin. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't luck. This was purpose. And for the first time, I truly felt it. Months passed, and life settled into something steady and peaceful. The trust flourished under new systems and clear rules. Family conflicts eased. Even my cousin began rebuilding small bridges, slowly, carefully, but honestly. One evening, while reviewing documents at my desk, I realized something important. The girl my cousin once called deadweight was gone. I wasn't invisible, I wasn't weak, I wasn't the quiet shadow in the room. I had become the protector of everything my family built. I closed the last folder of the day and stepped outside. The air was warm, and the sky glowed with soft orange light. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. My cousin tried to take everything from me, my role, my voice, my place in the family. She believed I was someone forgettable, someone small. But she never understood the truth. Strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes strength is quiet, sometimes strength is patient, sometimes strength is the person no one notices, until everything depends on her. I locked the office door, the bracelet cool against my wrist, and walked into the evening with a steady heart. The trust wasn't just in my hands. the trust was safe. Because I was exactly who I needed to be.